My husband slapped me in front of more than 250 people right after our 10-year-old daughter stepped off the stage. He thought the worst thing about that night was that everyone had seen it. He had no idea that Slap had just started unraveling something he had hidden for nearly 2 years. My name is Megan Brooks. I'm 36 years old, and I'm the mother of 10-year-old Ava and 7-year-old Ethan. That night, the grand ballroom at the Harborview Hotel held more than 250 parents, teachers, and donors. My daughter had just finished singing with the choir. I could still hear the applause in my ears as I walked toward the auction stage. My husband stood beside the podium. Ashley Reed stood close to him, one hand resting on the sleeve of his suit jacket. She saw me and did not take her hand away. "Ryan needs someone who understands the donor world," Ashley said, loudly enough for 2 people at the nearby table to hear. "Not a wife who's used to checking invoices at a dental office." "Take your hand off my husband." She laughed and still did not move her hand. "The scholarship fund doesn't pay for the 2 of you to vacation in Napa." Ryan's face went white. I saw his hand come up, and I still did not believe it was going to touch my face. The slap snapped my head to the side. My hip struck the edge of the auction table, sending several bid sheets sliding to the floor. I tasted blood in my mouth. The entire ballroom went silent. I looked up, and the first person I saw was not Ryan. It was Ava, standing behind the curtain in the wings, still wearing her blue choir uniform, one hand gripping the edge of the curtain. She was not crying. She looked at her father the way a child looks at a stranger who has just walked into her home. I did not cry. I did not hit him back. I pulled my phone from my coat pocket and typed one short line. "Dad, they used the scholarship money." A few minutes later, my father walked onto the stage. Charles Whitmore did not look toward me. He took the microphone, thanked everyone for coming, and then said that the Whitmore Education Foundation would not release another dollar until every dollar already spent had been fully accounted for. Margaret Sloan, chair of the Board of Trustees, stepped up immediately afterward. She stopped the auction, ordered that all financial records be preserved, and requested that no work device leave the hotel that night. Ryan turned to look at my father, not at me. What he did not know was that a few weeks later, when every one of his signatures was laid out on a table, the person sitting across from him would be the wife he had just slapped. Before I tell you what happened after that night, leave a comment and tell me where you're watching this story from. And if you've ever had to stay quiet to protect a family, a child, or someone you love, stay with me. For years, I thought keeping everything calm was the best way to protect my children too. I just did not understand that sometimes silence is exactly what allows someone else to keep crossing the line. That morning began like every other Friday morning had for 12 years. At 6:15, I went downstairs before everyone else. I turned on the stove, poured pancake batter onto the griddle, and opened the paper calendar taped to the refrigerator door, the thing Ryan always teased me about as a relic from the last century. Everything was on it. Monday, Ethan had swim practice. Wednesday, Ava had piano. Friday, today's square, had been written in red ink 3 weeks earlier. Gala, 6:30 p.m. I'm an accountant. All day long, I reconcile numbers that are supposed to match. At home, I kept the same habit with my family. Who was going where, who was picking up whom, who still needed what. If the calendar balanced, everything was fine. For years, I used it to convince myself that everything really was fine. Ava came down first, her hair still wet, and started talking before she even sat down. "Mom, Miss Bennett gave me the high harmony in the last part. Only 4 of us get to sing the high harmony. Sing it for me." She sang 4 notes, missed one, then laughed at herself. "Will Dad sit in the front row, Mom?" he promised. Ethan came down next, dragging a backpack that weighed twice what he needed to carry. He climbed onto his chair and waited until the exact moment I set his plate down to speak. "On Wednesday, my class has an animal presentation. I'm doing mine on humpback whales." "That sounds great. Can Dad come?" Ryan, 39, walked into the kitchen right then, already in a dress shirt, phone in hand. "Which Wednesday, buddy?" "Next Wednesday, 10 o'clock. "I'll check my calendar." He did not look at our son. He looked at the screen. "Next week is post-gala wrap-up. I can't promise yet." Ethan nodded and did not ask again. That was the detail that bothered me most. A 7-year-old had already learned not to ask his father twice. Ryan drank his coffee, standing at the corner of the kitchen counter like a guest. His phone lay face down on the stone. In the 15 minutes he was in the kitchen, I counted 4 times that he flipped it over, read something, then turned it face down again. The 4th time, I was standing close enough to see the name on the lock screen. Ashley Reed. 6:42 a. Ryan turned the phone over faster than he had the previous 3 times. Busy morning? I asked. Seating chart. A donor changed plans at the last minute. He set his mug in the sink. Just work. I did not ask anything else. Ava was sitting 6 feet away. That was what I had been doing for almost a year, and I had gotten so good at it that I no longer noticed I was doing it. When Ryan came home late, I said Dad was in a meeting. When he missed Ethan's school performance, I said Dad was helping other kids get to go to school. When he sat at dinner with his eyes glued to his screen, I asked the children about their day so no one would notice that their father had not asked. I told myself I was protecting the image of a good father in my children's eyes. I believed that for a very long time. There is one night from 10 years ago that I remember more clearly than almost anything else. Ava was born 3 weeks early and had to stay in the hospital. Ryan slept 3 nights straight in the plastic chair beside my bed without going home to shower or change clothes. The night nurse got so used to seeing him that she stopped asking for identification. On the 3rd night, he held Ava in his arms and said one thing to me. Our family is never going to live for status, Megan. I don't need anyone looking at me to know who I am. The man standing at the corner of the kitchen counter that morning was no longer the man who had said that. I knew it. I had known for months. In my line of work, when 2 columns of numbers do not match, you are not allowed to look away. You have to find where the discrepancy is, no matter how long it takes. At home, I did the opposite. I saw discrepancies every day. A call taken out on the porch, a suit jacket sent to a dry cleaner I did not know, nights when he came home after both children were asleep and I filed them away somewhere in my head and closed the books. But I also knew marriages have bad stretches. My parents once went nearly a year barely speaking to each other, followed by 20 normal years. I thought this was our bad stretch. I thought that if I kept the schedule running, kept breakfast on the table, kept the children steady, then the stretch would pass. At 6:50, Ryan picked up his car keys. What are you wearing tonight? The dark blue dress. Good, he nodded. Don't stand out too much. Tonight is about the school. What does that mean? It means there are donors, school reporters, photographers. He spoke in an ordinary tone, the tone of someone explaining a procedure. Just sit at the parent table with the kids. Don't wander around the VIP section. Don't draw attention to yourself. I stood there with the pancake spatula in my hand. I had 3 or 4 things ready to say back. I had arranged them neatly in my head. But Ava was sitting right behind me, asking Ethan what the 2nd grade song was called, and I knew that if I said one sentence there would be a second, and then she would look up. So I only said, okay. He walked toward the door and picked up the tie draped over the back of a chair, a navy tie with fine stripes that I had never seen in our closet. New tie? Ashley picked it. She said this color works with the stage backdrop. He did not lower his voice, hesitate, or look at me to see how I would react. He said it like a logistical detail. He bent down, kissed Ava on the forehead, ruffled Ethan's hair, then opened the door. He passed within 3 feet of me and did not stop. The place card at my seat during last year's parent appreciation dinner had read, Mrs. Ryan Brooks. I picked it up, turned it over twice in my hand, then set it back down. Table 11, beside the hallway to the restrooms. 3 rows away, under the warm lights in the donor section, another place card carried my father's name. He had not come that day. Even when my father and I were both at the same event, we did not sit at the same table or appear as a donor family. That was the arrangement between us, and I was the one who had asked for it. My father is Charles Whitmore. He is the founder and chairman of the Whitmore Education Foundation, which he created 30 years ago after selling his first company. The foundation funds scholarship programs across Connecticut and parts of New York, mostly matching grants. Whatever a school raises, the foundation adds the same amount, up to a committed limit. The foundation does not own any school. It does not have a seat in school administration. It only has money, and conditions attached to that money. At 23, I refused to work for my father. He was not angry. He simply asked why, and I gave him 3 reasons I had prepared before I ever walked into his office. I wanted a career no one could question, as something I got because of my last name. I did not want Ryan to be seen as a man living off his wife's family. And later, when we had Ava and then Ethan, I did not want either of them receiving special treatment anywhere just because of who their grandfather was. My father listened to all 3 reasons, nodded, and said he respected them. He also added one sentence that I thought was unnecessary at the time. Be careful. Sometimes people stay humble so long they forget what they actually have in their hands. I went into accounting. 13 years later, I was a senior accountant for a network of 7 dental practices in Fairfield County, responsible for reconciling all revenue and operating expenses. It was not glamorous work, but it was mine. In the early years, Ryan said he loved that about me. He used to tell friends that his wife could have lived off the Whitmore name but chose to work for herself. He told it as though it were a shared achievement for both of us. Then he became Chief Financial Officer of Westbridge Academy. The change did not happen in one day, it came through dinners. One evening about 4 years ago, we had dinner with a former board member and his wife. The wife asked what I did for a living. Before I could answer, Ryan said, "Megan handles the home front. She keeps the whole household running." I stayed quiet and let the sentence stand. On the drive home, I almost said something, then did not. From then on, everything slowly and neatly rearranged itself into a new order. I sat at parent tables instead of donor tables. I signed school paperwork as Megan Brooks, never Megan Whitmore Brooks. I never mentioned that Ava and Ethan's grandfather was the man whose name appeared on half the donor plaques in the main hallway. I let Ryan represent our family at every school event, and I told myself it was because I was busy, because I did not like crowds, because I wanted privacy. I believed those reasons for a long time. 6 months before the gala, my father asked me to come to his office in Greenwich. He was 64. He placed a succession packet drafted by the foundation's attorneys on the desk and told me he wanted me to become a successor co-trustee, not an honorary title, but a position with real responsibility written into the foundation's governing documents. I asked why now. Because I need you to learn while I'm still sitting here to teach you, not after I'm gone. He pushed the packet toward me and did not say another word while I read. I read all 41 pages, including the appendix on approval thresholds and the right to request grant use reports. It took almost an hour. My father sat across from me, finished a cup of tea, and did not rush me once. I signed. I signed on one condition. No public announcement yet. I told him I wanted to learn the work first, understand how the foundation operated, know what I was holding before I stood in front of other people. My father agreed, though I could see his hesitation. That was the reason I gave him. It was true, but it was not the whole truth. The other reason I did not say aloud, and did not admit to myself until much later, was that I was afraid of how Ryan would feel if he learned his wife held a real seat in the foundation funding the school where he served as CFO. That night, when I got home, I did tell him that I had signed some succession paperwork for my father's foundation. Ryan was looking at his phone. He glanced up for about 2 seconds. Good. The old man should start getting things in order. Then he laughed. Just a nice title on paper, right? You don't have time to sit through meetings. I said yes. I had spent years making sure Ryan never had to live in my father's shadow. I did not realize he was using that same darkness to erase me from his life. At 10:20 on a Tuesday night, Ryan's phone lit up on the nightstand. I did not pick it up. I just lay on my side and watched the screen light up and go dark, 3 times in 4 minutes. He was in the bathroom. When he came out, he took the phone into the hallway before answering. Ashley Reed, 31, had joined Westbridge almost 2 years earlier as Director of Development and Donor Relations. The first time I met her was at the beginning of year reception, and I remember thinking she was good at her job. She remembered everyone's name. She remembered everyone's children's names too. Over roughly the 11 months before the gala, 4 things changed. The first was the timing. Work messages started coming after 10 at night, then after 11, then on Sunday mornings too. The second was the travel. Ryan used to meet donors alone or with Thomas. Starting the previous fall, Ashley was on every trip. The third was what he called her. Once, I heard him say into the phone, "Yeah, Ash, I'll handle it." No one at Westbridge called her Ash. The fourth was what chilled me most. Ashley knew things only Ryan could have told her. She knew Ethan was afraid of fire alarms. She knew I had delivered by C-section. Once, she asked about my mother's herniated disc in the tone of someone who lived in the family. I brought it up with my husband once, in January. "I don't like the way she talks about our family like she lives here." Ryan set down his mug. "Do you hear yourself?" "I'm just saying. Fundraising doesn't have office hours, Megan. I have to call people when they're available. I don't get to choose the time." He looked at me like someone trying to stay patient. "You're always like this. Anyone gets close to me and you get insecure." The word insecure stayed in our house for the next 11 months. Every time I thought about asking a question, I heard it in my head first. Then Ashley started making decisions. She decided what Ryan wore to events. She decided which donors he sat next to at dinner. And by around March, she started deciding which events I should attend at all. It was always relayed to me through Ryan, and always in a reasonable tone. "This dinner is only for the executive team. That event is too crowded. Stay home with the kids, and take it easy. This one has reporters. We should keep the optics clean." One evening in April, Ava looked up from her homework at the kitchen table and asked me a question. "Mom, why does Miss Reed have more pictures with Dad on the school page than you do?" I stood beside the sink with a sponge in my hand and needed about 3 seconds. "Because those are work pictures, honey. Miss Reed and Dad work in the same department. Mom works at the dental offices. Nobody takes pictures of me reconciling invoices." Ava laughed and went back to her homework. I stood there a little longer, still holding the sponge, and realized I had just lied to my daughter so smoothly that I had not even needed to think. 3 days before the gala was the rehearsal at Harborview. I went to pick Ava up after choir practice. When I entered the ballroom, people were lining up for the school's official photo spread for the fundraising yearbook. Ryan stood in the middle. Thomas stood to his right. Ashley stepped into place on his left, adjusted the lapel of Ryan's jacket with 2 fingers, then turned toward the camera. She did it quickly and naturally, the kind of movement people only make when they have done it many times before. Ryan did not react. He did not even notice, and the fact that he did not notice was what made me stop in the middle of the aisle. Ava tugged my hand. "Mom, stand with Dad." I took 2 steps forward. The photographer, a young staff member I had never met, raised her hand. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This frame is for the executive team." About 7 or 8 people nearby heard her. 2 turned to look. I looked at my husband. Ryan kept his eyes on the camera. He said nothing. He did not tell her I was his wife. He did not shift half a step to make room. He just stood there and waited for the moment to pass. For 12 years, I had stood beside this man at friends' weddings, in hospital waiting rooms, on Ethan's soccer field. This was the first time I had ever needed permission to stand next to him, been denied, and watched him stay silent. I stepped back. Ava stepped back with me, and I felt her grip tighten around my hand. When the flash went off, Ashley walked past where I was standing, and paused for exactly 1 beat. "You look much more comfortable when you're not standing in the middle," she said softly. "I think it suits you better." Then she kept walking, already holding the seating chart for gala night. That night, around 9, my phone buzzed. The parent volunteer group chat, more than 40 people, mostly used to assign baked goods and registration table shifts, had just received an attachment. Someone in development had accidentally sent the gala budget estimate to the group. I opened it, scrolled down to service expenses, and stopped. Under 3 separate line items was the name of a company I had never heard of, and all 3 items fell within work Ashley was already being paid to do. I read the estimate at the kitchen table after both children were asleep, with a cold cup of tea beside me. It was 11 pages long. Someone in development had selected the wrong group when sending it, and more than 40 parent volunteers now had Westbridge Academy's entire gala budget on their phones. No one in the group said much. At 9 on a Tuesday night, most people were busy putting children to bed. One person wrote, "Wrong group?" No one replied. I opened it because I had been reading estimates for 13 years and did not know how to look at one without reading it. Most of the line items were normal: venue, catering, audio and lighting, printing, flowers, event insurance. The numbers were roughly what I would have guessed before seeing them. Then I reached page 7. AR Events and Strategy, LLC. VIP Guest Coordination. AR Events and Strategy, LLC. Donor Relations Consulting. AR Events and Strategy, LLC. Event Experience Design. I read those 3 lines twice. Not because of the amounts. The numbers were not shocking for an event of that size. It was because all 3 items, which I could practically recite from memory, sat squarely inside the job description of the Director of Development and Donor Relations. The school was paying an outside company to do exactly the work it was already paying Ashley Reed a salary to perform. In my profession, that has a name. It is not automatically fraud. It could be a clumsy arrangement, a poorly approved outsourcing contract, or an overlapping assignment. I had seen all 3 in the dental practices. But in every one of those situations, the first question is always the same: who owns the company? I searched the company name on Connecticut's state business registration portal. Anyone could do it. No account, no special access. AR Events and Strategy, LLC, had been formed 1 year and 7 months earlier. Its registered address was an apartment in Norwalk. The registered agent had a name I did not recognize, but the contact email began with Times Ashley, R Times, and ended with the company's own domain. I sat looking at the screen for a long time. I did not know whether Ashley owned the whole company, was merely a partner, or had only lent her name to it. There was no way to know that from a public lookup page, and I knew exactly how wide the gap was between connected to and owns. So I did the only thing I was entitled to do. I saved the estimate to my personal folder, took a screenshot of the registration page, and noted the date and time. Then the iPad on the kitchen shelf chimed. It was the family iPad. Ava used it for school. Ethan watched videos on it on weekends, and it had been syncing photos from Ryan's phone since 2019, from the day he set it up so I could download pictures of the kids. I picked it up because I thought it was a low battery alert. A newly synced photo was on the screen. Ryan and Ashley were standing on a wooden balcony. Behind them, rows of grapevines ran down a low hillside in orange-gold late afternoon light. Ashley wore a white hotel bathrobe with a logo over the left side of her chest, her hair still wet. Ryan held 2 glasses of champagne, 1 in each hand. There was no one else in the frame. I remembered that trip. He told me he was flying out for 3 days to meet a donor family in California, that they were considering a major gift, that the conversation had to happen in person. I zoomed in. On Ashley's left wrist was a thin bracelet, its face catching the sunlight in a tiny point of brightness. I opened our shared family calendar, the one Ryan added his work commitments to, so I would know when he was away. That stretch of dates had one entry, exactly 4 words long: Donor Cultivation Retreat. The date on the photo fell squarely inside that entry. I sat at the kitchen table for almost another hour. I wanted to go upstairs. I wanted to wake him up and hold the iPad in front of his face. I had thought through what I would say, and I thought about it long enough to hear his answer in my head. You're being insecure again. It was a work trip. What exactly do you want me to explain? And I knew that all I had was 1 photograph taken on a balcony. 1 photograph proved nothing. 1 photograph plus 3 lines in a budget estimate plus an email address on a business registration page still did not prove anything. I reconcile accounts for a living. I knew this feeling exactly. When you have only 2 data points that do not match, the worst thing you can do is start shouting before you have the 3rd. I saved the photo to my folder. I took a screenshot of the calendar. I wrote down the date. Then I turned off the kitchen light and went upstairs to lie beside my husband. The next morning, Ryan came down to the kitchen earlier than usual. He did not pour coffee. He stood at the end of the table with his phone in his hand and asked me a question before I could say anything. Did you open my iPad last night? The Harborview Hotel sits beside the marina in Stamford, and its grand ballroom has a wall of glass doors looking straight out over the water. By 6 that evening, the backdrop at the end of the room was finished. Across it ran this year's theme, Expanding Educational Opportunity. Beneath it, a large screen looped photographs of scholarship students in classrooms, laboratories, on athletic fields, all smiling. I arrived 40 minutes early, because Ava had to report with the choir. She was so nervous she could not eat. Mom, I forgot the words to the second part. Sing the second part for me. I don't remember it. Try. She sang it, without missing a word, then looked up at me with the expression of someone who had just been tricked. You remember all of it. You're just scared. I smoothed her hair. Those are two different things. Dad will sit in the front row, right? He promised. Ryan did come. He sat in the front row, third seat from the aisle, at about 6:50. He stayed for 6 minutes. Then Ashley appeared at the end of the row, bent down and said something in his ear, and he got up and followed her to the donor reception area. He came back at 7:20, sat another 4 minutes, then left again. The third time he did not sit at all. He only stood at the end of the row with his phone in his hand, then disappeared toward the hallway. I counted 3 times. I had not meant to count. But I was 4 rows back, and my eyes kept returning to that empty seat. Ethan sat 2 rows away from me with Miss Powell, the teacher supervising the younger children. He turned around twice to make sure I was still there. I wore the dark blue dress. It was the same dress I had worn to 3 school events over the past 2 years, and I chose it for exactly the reason Ryan had given me in the kitchen that morning. Ashley wore silver. She passed me at 7 with a seating chart in her hand, and I saw the bracelet. Thin, pale gold, around her left wrist. 3 nights earlier, I had zoomed in on it on the iPad screen beneath the late afternoon light of a California balcony. Now it was less than 3 feet from me in a ballroom raising scholarship money. Thomas Brooks, 66, stepped to the podium at 7:15. My father-in-law had been head of school at Westbridge for 17 years. He spoke without notes, in a warm, measured voice, the voice of someone used to standing in front of parents. He thanked the donors, he talked about the mission, then he introduced his son, and the man safeguarding Westbridge's financial future, our chief financial officer, Ryan Brooks. The room applauded. Ryan stood at the executive table beside the lead donor table, under the brightest lights in the room. I sat at table 14 in the parent section, near the door to the hallway. 3 weeks earlier, when Ashley sent the seating chart to families whose children were performing, I had asked whether I could sit closer to the stage so Ava could see me. She replied 2 days later with one line. The area near the stage was full for donors and the executive team. The woman sitting beside me was Elena Ramirez, a single mother. I knew her because her daughter Sophia sat at Ava's table in class, and the girls had been friends since 3rd grade. Elena was a nurse, and that night she wore a white blouse that I guessed was the nicest work blouse she owned. She asked about Ava, then went quiet for a while as the screen above us cycled through pictures. Megan, she said, lowering her voice. Can I ask you something? Last week the school sent us a letter adjusting tuition assistance. Sophia's was reduced. Not by much, but I'd already budgeted this year down to the dollar. Did they tell you why? Just vague language. Resource reallocation or something. She looked around the ballroom at the candles, the bar, the backdrop. I don't understand. They put on something like this, and then say there isn't enough scholarship money? Have you called the finance office? Twice. They said they'd review it and get back to me. She shrugged, the shrug of someone used to being told someone would get back to her. I'll just pick up more night shifts. It'll be fine. I was about to say something comforting. Right then, the screen changed. Sophia Ramirez appeared, her hair pulled up, standing in front of a science project board with a wide smile. Beneath her photo ran a line asking people to donate. Elena looked up and laughed softly when she saw her daughter. She did not understand why I stayed silent for so long. In my head, 3 things sat beside one another for the first time. The 3 lines in the budget estimate, a bracelet on a wrist in the front rows, and the face of a child being used to raise money while her own assistance had just been cut. I had no evidence connecting those 3 things. I only had the instinct of someone who had stared at too many reconciliations to believe the mismatch was random. The choir went on at 7:45. Ava stood in the second row on the left. She searched for me in the crowd before the song began, and I raised my hand. She sang the upper harmony in the final section without missing a word. The front row seat, third from the aisle, stayed empty for the entire performance. When the applause began, I stood and walked toward the auction stage, where where Ryan stood beside the podium with Thomas and two donors. I intended to say exactly one thing to him. She finished singing. Ashley saw me coming. She moved half a step closer to Ryan and placed her hand on the sleeve of his suit jacket. Then she looked down at the bracelet on her wrist, turned it once with her thumb, and looked up at me. A wife who knows her place doesn't ruin her husband's most important night. I still remember what I was holding at that moment, an opened bottle of water I had taken from the refreshment table to bring to Ava after she finished singing. My husband stood about 3 steps from the auction podium. Thomas was on his right with the two donors. Ashley was on his left, her hand on the sleeve of his suit jacket, and she did not remove it when I came closer. Ava just finished singing, I told Ryan. She had the upper harmony. She didn't miss a word. He nodded. I know, I'll go over in a minute. You said that at 7. Ashley gave a short, nasal laugh. Ryan needs someone who understands the donor world, she said, looking not at me but toward the two guests beside Thomas. Not a wife who's used to checking invoices at a dental office. One of the donors looked down into his wine glass. Take your hand off my husband, Megan. Ashley turned toward me, dropping her voice very low. Everyone here knows who has really been standing beside Ryan for the last 2 years. I looked at my husband. Are you going to let your employee talk to your wife like that? Ryan put a hand on my elbow and gently pressured me toward the hallway door. Megan, don't make a scene, not tonight. I pulled my arm away. I knew I should have stopped there. For 3 days, I had told myself I did not have enough, that I had only 2 data points that did not match, that I would wait, but I had just watched the front row seat stay empty through my daughter's entire performance. I had just heard Elena say she would take more night shifts, and I had just heard a woman wearing that bracelet tell me I only knew how to check invoices. AR events and strategy, I said. Ashley's hand dropped away from Ryan's arm. 3 line items in the gala estimate. Paid to an outside company to do the exact work listed in your job description. Am I reading that wrong? Where did you get that? Ashley's voice was no longer low. It was sent to the parent volunteer group. More than 40 people have it. That is a legitimate service contract. Ashley spoke faster than she needed to, and she spoke to Thomas rather than to me. It has full approval. Mr. Brooks signed it. I know someone signed it, I said. I'm asking who owns the company. Ashley did not answer. She looked at Ryan. And Ryan did not answer either. And Napa, I turned to him. You said 3 days, meeting a donor family. There is no one in the pictures except the 2 of you. You went through my pictures? They synced automatically to the kid's iPad, Ryan. The iPad you set up. Thomas left the donor group and walked over. He did not raise his voice. He never needed to. Megan, this area is for VIP guests and the organizing team. Please step outside. Sophia Ramirez just had her tuition assistance reduced, I said. Her face is on that screen over there raising money. Who cut her aid? Financial matters are not discussed here. Then where are they discussed, Thomas? I did not leave. I stood exactly where I was and waited for an answer from one of the 3 people in front of me. Then Ryan slapped me. I did not see his hand come up. I only heard an explosion in my left ear, and the floor tilted. My right hip hit the edge of the auction table. The water bottle fell from my hand and rolled twice across the carpet. The stack of bid sheets slid to the floor in a fan. I tasted blood. The inside of the left side of my lower lip split in a short cut. The entire ballroom went silent. Not the silence of a solemn moment? The silence of 250 people stopping in the middle of their sentences at once? Then everything happened at the same time. Miss Bennett, the choir teacher, ran in from the wings and knelt beside me. A father at table 6 shot to his feet and called security. At least 4 phones rose and pointed toward us. The background music kept playing until Margaret Sloan reached the tech table and signaled for it to be cut. I looked up. Ashley had stepped back 3 paces, both hands clutching the seating chart against her chest. Thomas looked toward the guest tables before he looked at me. And at the far end of the room, to the left of the stage, the velvet curtain opened by the width of a hand. Ava stood there, still in her blue choir uniform, one hand holding the edge of the curtain. She was not crying. I had not expected that. I had braced myself for tears, for her to call out for me, for her to run toward me. Ava only looked at her father. She stared for a long time without blinking, with the face of a child trying to recognize someone she knew well. 10 years old, she had finished singing 4 minutes earlier. She had just searched for me in the crowd and seen me raise my hand. "You pushed me," Ryan said. I looked back at him. "You pushed me that far. In front of everyone. Look what you just made happen, Megan." That was the first thing my husband said after he hit me. Not a question about whether I was all right. Not an apology. The first thing he chose was a conclusion about who had caused this. And that was the moment he stopped being my husband in my mind. From that second forward, whenever I thought of him, I thought only of Ryan. I stayed on the floor for about 5 more seconds, one hand braced against the edge of the table. In those 5 seconds, I calculated very quickly. If I stood up and said I was fine, if I let Miss Bennet guide me quietly into the hallway, if I let Thomas call this a misunderstanding and everyone returned to the auction, I even knew what I would say to Ava in the car. I had already drafted it in my head, and it sounded completely reasonable. "Mom and Dad had an argument, honey. Adults sometimes lose their temper." Then my daughter, standing behind that curtain, would learn one thing that very night. The person who gets hit is the person responsible for keeping everything calm. I took my phone from my coat pocket and typed one short line to my father. I did not stand up because more than 250 people were watching. I stood up because my daughter was waiting to see whether her mother would say that what had just happened was normal. My father was in the donor reception area, one short hallway away from the ballroom. He arrived in less than a minute. I know because I saw him come through the inner door while Miss Bennet was still handing me a cloth napkin to press against my lip. Charles Whitmore was 64. He moved more slowly than he had 10 years earlier, but he walked straight between the tables without stopping to greet anyone, and the room opened up to let him through. He stopped in front of me and looked for about 3 seconds. The napkin, the red stain on it, the loose hair on the left side of my face. Ava had run out from behind the curtain and was clinging to my waist with both arms. "Get your coat," he said. "I'm taking you and the kids home right now." "Not yet, Dad." Megan. Hallway cameras, ballroom cameras. I named each one slowly because I knew that if I spoke fast, my voice would break. The gala expense records, Ryan's and Ashley's work computers. If any of those things leave this hotel tonight, there may be nothing left tomorrow. My father was silent for one beat. Then he did the thing I remember most. He did not tell me he would take care of it. He turned, found Margaret Sloane in the crowd, and walked straight toward her. The two of them spoke for about 4 minutes beside the tech table. I could not hear them. I sat in the chair. Miss Bennet had pulled over for me, holding Ava in my lap, and watched their heads bent together on the other side of the room. As I sat there watching, I understood something, and it was not comforting. My father could not walk into that room and fire anyone. He did not own Westbridge. He did not sit on its board. The only things he had were money that had not yet been released, and the right to ask where money already released had gone, and he needed Margaret to turn those things into action. For years, I had kept my distance from the foundation because I feared my father's shadow was too large. Sitting there with a blood-stained napkin in my hand, I realized that shadow was much smaller than I had imagined. It covered exactly one thing: the flow of money. The rest would have to be mine. Then my father went to the podium. He kept it brief. He thanked everyone for coming, apologized that the evening had to end early, then said the Whitmore Education Foundation would not release another dollar until every dollar already spent had been fully accounted for. Margaret stepped up immediately after him. She stopped the auction, announced that the board was ordering the preservation of all financial records related to the event and spending over the previous 2 years, and requested that no school work device leave Harborview that night. Ryan found my father in the hallway 10 minutes later, after guests had begun leaving. "Charles has no authority to fire me." He said that to a man standing beside his daughter, whose lip was split. My father looked at him for a long time before answering. "I do not decide who gets fired, Ryan. But I will not transfer another dollar until the board knows where the money went. Do you know what you just did to this school? There are 11 auction lots still unopened. Families made commitments last month. Then they will still be committed tomorrow. If the books are clean, Thomas walked over, his tie already removed and held in one hand. Charles, I think we're taking a family matter much too far. They have a private marital conflict. The school should not be dragged into it. There are two matters here, and they are not the same. My father kept his voice even. My son-in-law hitting his wife in front of 200 people is a police matter. Where scholarship money went is a matter for the board and for the people who contributed it. You do not get to combine the two, so both can disappear. No one is combining anything. Good. Then tomorrow morning you will receive a letter from Foundation Council requesting a grant use report. Thomas did not answer. He looked toward the end of the hallway, where Ashley was talking with two staff members. Then my father did the most important thing he did all night, and it had nothing to do with money. He went down on one knee on the carpet so his eyes were level with Ava's. I'm going to ask you one question. Where do you want to be right now? Ava thought for a moment. I want to go home with Mom. Then that's where we're going. I'll ride with the three of you. I'll sit in front. He did not say anything about her father. Not one word. He did not promise her everything would be all right either. I went to find Ethan in Miss Powell's seating area. He had not seen anything. Miss Powell had taken the younger children into the back hallway the moment the music stopped. On my way to the door, I passed Ryan. He did not ask whether Ava was all right. He was talking to Margaret in a rushed voice, one hand pointing toward the stage. Miss Sloane, we still have 11 auction lots unopened. Is there any way to continue the program for 30 more minutes? A lot of donors have already committed. We reached the parking lot close to 10. Ethan fell asleep on my father's shoulder before we even made it out of the lobby. As soon as the car pulled away from the hotel, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Come home now. We need to fix this story before Ava tells anyone. My father drove. I sat in the back seat between the children. Ethan slept the entire way, his head against my shoulder, still clutching the gala program Miss Powell had given each child. Ava stayed awake. She looked out the window for 20 minutes and said nothing. When we got home, my father carried Ethan upstairs, laid him in bed, then stood in the doorway and looked at me for about 3 seconds before leaving. He said he would call in the morning. Ava sat on the edge of her bed, still wearing her blue choir uniform. Mom, why did Dad hit you? I had prepared for that question the entire ride home, and when it came, I still was not ready. I sat down beside her. I don't know why Dad did that. I don't think Dad can explain it either. But I know 3 things for certain, and I'm going to tell you all 3. Ava looked at me. First, no one has the right to hit another person. No one. Not adults, not when they're very angry, not even inside our own home. Second, what happened tonight was not your fault. You did nothing to make it happen, and you do not have to apologize for seeing it. She started blinking faster. Third, I will keep you and your brother safe. That is my job, not yours. Ava put her arms around me and cried for about 5 minutes, silently. She was 10 years old and had already learned how to cry without waking anyone up, and I did not know when she had learned that. She fell asleep just before 11. Ryan came home after midnight. I heard the garage door, then footsteps stopping in the kitchen for about a minute, then him coming up the stairs. He entered the bedroom and closed the door behind him. Do you know today was the worst day of my life? I was sitting in the chair by the window, still wearing the dark blue dress. I lost control for one moment, Megan. One moment. After 12 years of never laying a finger on you, he loosened his tie, the navy one with fine stripes, and you chose exactly the place to push me there. Are you going to ask whether I'm all right? He looked at me. Then he looked at my lip for about half a second and looked away. I'm sorry it happened there, in front of 200 people, in front of donors. He sat on the edge of the bed. Do you understand what is going to happen to this school? Charles just got on stage and announced a funding freeze. In front of everyone! I noticed that in the 3 sentences he had just said, not one was an apology for hitting me. He was apologizing for the location. Now we have to deal with the Ava part, he said. What does that mean? She's 10. She cannot understand the context. She only saw an image, and she will carry that image for the rest of her life. He said the next sentence in the voice of a man proposing a reasonable solution for both sides. Tomorrow morning, tell her you slipped and hit the edge of the auction table. It was crowded and loud, and she was standing far away. She'll believe you. I sat still for about 3 seconds. No, Megan. No. I am not going to lie to my daughter to make you more comfortable. It's not to make me more comfortable. It's so she doesn't grow up with. She already saw it, Ryan. You cannot erase what she saw by making her mother lie. All you teach her is that when adults do something wrong, children have to pretend nothing happened. He stood, walked over to where his suit jacket hung on the chair, and pulled a paper folded into quarters from the inside pocket. Then sign this. I opened it. It was printed, not handwritten, and it had been fully drafted before he came home. I looked at the sharp quarter folds in the page and thought about the time between the moment he hit me and the moment he entered this bedroom. Somewhere during that time, he had sat down, opened a computer, and typed every sentence. 3 paragraphs. The first called the incident at the gala a family misunderstanding during a stressful evening. The second stated that there was no connection whatsoever between the incident and school grants or scholarship funds. The third said, I was going through a period of personal stress and had overreacted. At the bottom of the page was a blank space for my signature. The second paragraph was the one that kept me sitting there longest. No one at the gala had mentioned scholarship funds except me. No reporter had asked, no parent had said anything. This statement denied an accusation the public had never heard. I read the whole thing, folded it back along the original creases, and set it on the nightstand. No. What are you going to do? Let her go to school and tell her whole class that her father hit her mother? His voice rose, then immediately dropped because he remembered the children were asleep in the next room. Do you know what will happen? Ava will have to live with everyone in that school, looking at her father differently. Forever. Is that what you want? If that happens, it will be a consequence of what you did, not of her telling the truth. Ryan picked the paper up from the nightstand. He folded it again, more carefully this time, and put it in his pocket. If you are not going to protect this family, he said, then do not expect the school to protect the children's places. I did not sleep. I sat in the chair by the window until about 4 in the morning, then went downstairs and made coffee. Ryan came down at 7 on Saturday morning, already dressed in a shirt. He poured coffee and stood at the corner of the counter, in the exact place where he always stood. I don't think you understood the full situation last night, he said. So I'm going to explain it clearly. I said nothing. Ava's and Ethan's tuition. Do you know how much we're paying? I pay it every month, Ryan. I know exactly how much. You know the amount you pay. Do you know the real amount? He set his mug down. The kids receive the employee child tuition benefit. That means we pay 1/3 of listed tuition. If I'm no longer at Westbridge, that benefit disappears next semester. I did the calculation in my head without intending to. My profession made me do it automatically, and I hated that in that moment. The result was an amount I could not cover from my salary for both children. Not that year. I also spoke to my father this morning, Ryan continued. He has authority to restrict campus access if someone engages in disruptive conduct at a school event. It's in the handbook, you can look it up. Disruptive conduct. That's how it will be documented. I set my coffee mug down and asked him in the calmest voice I could manage. Are you telling me that if I do not retract what happened last night, my children will lose their school placements and I will be barred from their school? Are you threatening your own children's education to force your wife to stay quiet? Ryan looked at me. I'm telling you the practical consequences of the decisions you're considering. Those are 2 different things. No, Ryan, they're the same thing, just worded differently. Interpret it however you want. Footsteps sounded on the stairs. Ava stood on the 4th step from the bottom, one hand on the railing, still in pajamas. I did not know how long she had been there. Are Ethan and I getting kicked out of school, Mom? Ryan turned. Ava, go back upstairs. I heard you. She looked at me, not her father. Is it because of you? I walked to the staircase and sat on the bottom step so my eyes were lower than hers. No one is getting kicked out of school. Mom and Dad are talking about money, and adults tend to talk loudly when they talk about money. You do not have to worry about that. I said it very calmly, and while I was saying it, I calculated how much was left in my savings account, and I knew it was not enough. Ethan appeared behind his sister. He was still holding his stuffed animal. I don't want to change schools, he said. Marcus goes here. No one is changing schools, buddy. But Ava said. Then he started crying, the way a 7-year-old cries when he does not fully understand what is happening, but can feel that something is very wrong. He cried loudly, openly, nothing like his sister. I picked him up. He was heavier than I remembered, and he wrapped both legs around my waist the way he had when he was 4. And over his shoulder, I looked at Ryan, still standing by the kitchen counter. He did not come closer. He did not tell the children that this had nothing to do with them. He did not tell Ethan that Dad would take care of it. He stood there with one hand still on the stone counter and watched his son cry. I had lived with this man for 12 years. I knew his face when he was worried, when he was tired, when he was angry. What I saw that morning was none of those. He was letting it happen, because it was useful to him. You see, he said quietly, loud enough for me to hear, and not Ethan. This is what you're putting on the table. I took the children upstairs, put on a cartoon for Ethan, and sat with them for 20 minutes. Then I went into the bedroom, closed the door, and photographed the statement Ryan had left on the nightstand. He had taken the copy from the night before, but another one was there that morning. I photographed every message he had sent me from gala night through that morning. I photographed the call log too. I opened the Notes app and typed out the kitchen conversation in order, as close to word for word as I could remember, with the time. For 11 months, I had thought our problem was an affair. That morning, I understood it was much bigger than that. Ryan could no longer separate 3 things: his family, his job, and his power. They had fused into one block. When that block was threatened, he would use any part of it to save the others, including the part that contained his 2 children. At 6 that evening, he carried a bag to the door. I'll sleep at the club for a few nights. Or a hotel. You need time to think clearly. He did not say goodbye to the children. Monday morning, he did not come back. $24,700 had disappeared from our joint savings account. I found out at the checkout at Stop and Shop on Post Road at 7:50 Monday morning, with a cart full of groceries for the week and 2 children waiting at home. The card was declined. The cashier ran it a second time. Same result. I apologized, handed her another card, my personal credit card, and it went through. I sat in my car in the parking lot and opened the banking app. Our joint savings account had $312 left. I pulled up the transaction history. One transfer, made at 7:51 Sunday evening, for $24,700, sent to an account whose last 4 digits I did not recognize. Then I checked the secondary debit card we used for household spending. It had been locked at 8:12 that same night. 21 minutes between the 2 actions. He had sat down and done both in one evening. I texted him. Where is the $24,700? He replied 4 minutes later. I'm protecting family assets. You've spent the last 2 days proving that you're acting erratically. I'm not going to let you drain the account and hand the money to lawyers. I read that message 3 times in the car. That money was not his. It was 12 years of joint income. Some of it came from my year-end bonuses. And the largest portion was what we had set aside for the children, the reserve fund we started when Ava entered 1st grade, for summer camp, braces, and things that had not happened yet. I knew his email password. I had known it since 2017, when he asked me to print his plane tickets. I sat in the grocery store parking lot and thought about that for about a minute. Then I did not do it. Not because I was noble, because I knew exactly what would happen. 6 months from now, no one would be talking about the $24,700. They would only be talking about the fact that I had logged into my husband's account. Instead, I did what I knew how to do. I took screenshots of the balance before and after. I took screenshots of the time-stamped transaction history. I photographed the card lock notice. I saved the entire message thread. I recorded the time the card was declined at the grocery store and the name of the store. I sent everything to my personal email. Then I called my father. He listened to all of it in silence. When I finished, he asked only one question. How much do you need? Dad. I'll transfer $200,000 to you this morning. You hire the best lawyer in the state. You do not have to count pennies with that man. No. Megan. Listen to me first. I was still sitting in the car, looking at a shopping cart someone had abandoned in the middle of the lot. If you transfer $200,000 to me today, then 6 months from now Ryan will stand in front of a judge and say his wife hid marital assets using her father's money. And he'll have a bank statement proving a large deposit hit my account this exact week. My father was silent. I need enough for groceries, electricity, this month's tuition, and a retainer for a lawyer. Transfer exactly that amount. And document it as a loan between father and daughter, in writing, dated, with a nominal interest rate. You want me to draw up a promissory note with my own daughter? I want every dollar that enters my account over the next 6 months to be explainable by a piece of paper. He transferred the money at 11 that morning. Attached was a 2-page document drafted by his attorney, and I signed it at the kitchen table. That afternoon, I packed for the children. I did it from a list, because without a list I would have stood in the middle of the room unable to move my hands. 4 days of uniforms, pajamas, toothbrushes, workbooks, Ethan's stuffed animal. The moon-shaped nightlight Ava insisted she no longer needed but still turned on every night. My friend, we had known each other since sophomore year of college, and she lived 18 minutes from my house, cleared out the guest room and her older daughter's room for the 3 of us. She did not ask one question about Ryan. She only asked whether Ethan ate food with onions in it. I told the children we were staying over for a few days for fun, like camping. Ethan believed me. Ava looked at me for a while, nodded, and asked nothing. That night, lying on the spare bed in my friend's daughter's room, I admitted something to myself that I had avoided for 4 days. I did not leave my house as a strategy. I did not leave because a lawyer told me to, because I did not have a lawyer yet. I did not leave because of the money either, though the $24,700 was the reason I gave my friend. I left because I no longer wanted to sleep in that house while he still had a key. For 4 days, I had told myself I was dealing with an affair, a financial issue, a work crisis involving my husband. Lying in the dark that night, I finally gave the thing I was dealing with its proper name. At 11 that night, the iPad on the nightstand lit up. A new album had just synced from Ryan's phone. It contained 4 days of photos from Napa. I went into my friend's living room so I would not wake the children. I sat on the sofa, turned on a small table lamp, and opened the album. It took about 10 minutes to load. I watched the progress bar and did nothing. The first photo was the balcony, the grapevines, the late afternoon light. I had already seen that one. From the second photo on, it was different. A hotel room. The bed unmade. Ashley sitting on the edge of the bed wrapped in a blanket, smiling at the camera. Ryan was not in the frame, he was the one taking the picture. A table set for 2, candles between them, 2 glasses of wine, no third place setting, no third chair, no coat hanging on the back of any other chair. A bottle of champagne in an ice bucket. A small cake with 1 candle on a tray. An open blue velvet box, with the thin pale gold bracelet inside. It was the bracelet I had seen on Ashley Reed's left wrist, less than 3 feet from me, in the Harbor View Hotel ballroom 3 days earlier. I kept scrolling. One photo was carelessly framed, probably meant to document something rather than preserve a memory. A wooden tabletop, a phone, and a room service bill lying at an angle in the lower left corner. The hotel name was printed at the top. Room number, date. I zoomed in. Then I opened the photo information and read the date and time metadata for the entire album. The earliest photo was taken close to noon on Thursday. The latest was taken Sunday morning. 4 days. I opened the shared family calendar. The entry he had added himself was still there, exactly 4 words. Donor Cultivation Retreat. I opened the 11-page gala estimate, scrolled to page 7, and compared it. Then I sat motionless for a long time on someone else's sofa, in a living room that was not mine, close to 1 in the morning. In the entire album, more than 300 photos, there was no other face, no table set for 4, not one photo that could have been taken with a donor family, not even a rushed shot, not even an off-center one. What I felt then was not shock. I had known for months, in the way people know something they have not yet allowed themselves to name. What I felt was closer to relief, the uncomfortable relief of someone who has finally found the discrepancy after months of doubting her own memory. 12 years, 2 children, and there was a cake with a candle in a California hotel room, and I did not know what occasion it was for. I let myself sit with that for about 10 minutes. Then I started working. On the back of a grocery receipt, I drew 2 columns. The left column was what I knew for certain. Ryan told me 3 days, and he also entered 3 days in the family calendar. The album showed 4 days. No donor appeared during those 4 days. Ashley Reed received a bracelet during a period recorded as business travel, and she wore it publicly at the school fundraiser. The right column was what I did not know. I did not know who paid for the trip. I did not know what budget category it was charged to, or whether it was charged to any budget at all. I did not know whose money bought the bracelet. I did not know whether the 3 lines in the estimate had anything to do with those 4 days. The right column was longer than the left. That was where I almost made a mistake. Sitting in that living room that night with a photo of the open velvet box on the screen, I badly wanted to write one final line in the left column. Ryan used scholarship money to pay for this trip. I did not write it. I had spent 13 years reconciling accounts. If I gave a board a conclusion the documents could not support, they would not reject only that conclusion. They would reject everything I gave them, including the parts that were true. I exported the entire album with the original date and time metadata and saved it to an external hard drive. I did not log into anything else. Not his work email, not the school's systems, not his private cloud account. I only took what had flowed automatically onto the device my daughter used for homework every night. At 4 in the morning, I texted my father. "Give me the foundation attorney's number." He replied 7 minutes later, even though it was 4 in the morning, and I did not ask why he was awake. Olivia Grant called me back at 7:15. She was counsel for the Whitmore Education Foundation, and I had met her exactly twice in my life, at 2 family dinners years earlier. I spoke for 16 minutes. I told the story in chronological order, without adding assumptions, and I read her both columns from the back of the grocery receipt. She did not interrupt me once. When I finished, she was silent for about 3 seconds. "Miss Brooks, I need you to do exactly one thing between now and when we meet. Do not confront him again. Do not text explanations. Do not call Miss Reed. Do not answer your father-in-law if he calls. What if Ryan texts me? Save it and do not respond." Then she said the sentence I wrote down immediately after we hung up, and I reread it many times in the months that followed. "When we meet, the first thing we do is preserve what you already have. From this point forward, silence is no longer submission. It is strategy." I went to the clinic at 9 that morning. Not a hospital, not an emergency room. It was the family practice where we had always taken the children for vaccinations, 10 minutes from home, and I was seen by Dr. Nadia Okonkwo, who had cared for me since I was pregnant with Ethan. She looked at my lip, looked at the bruise on my hip, then washed her hands and sat in the rolling chair across from me. "When did this happen?" "Friday night. Today is Tuesday." "Yes." She did not ask anything else about the 3-day gap. She only typed into the computer. Then she turned back and asked me one question in an ordinary voice, the voice of someone who had asked it many times in her career. "Do you feel safe going back to your home?" I opened my mouth to say I was fine. Instead, I heard myself say, "My husband hit me." At my daughter's school fundraiser. She saw it. That was the first time I had said the sentence out loud. Not to my father, I had only sent him one short message. Not to Olivia, I had told her in the language of a report. Not to my friend, she saw my face and did not ask. Saying it with my own mouth, as a sentence with a subject and a verb, was something entirely different. Dr. Okonkwo did not react dramatically. She did not gasp or reach for my hand. She only nodded once and turned back to the screen. "I'll document the injuries, the description, the date and time you provided, and the date of this examination. I'll take photographs for your medical record. You can request copies at any time. Do you have to report it to anyone? Not for an adult, except in certain specific circumstances. This is your record." She pushed her glasses up. "But I recommend that you have it, even if you do not yet know what you will use it for." That afternoon, I went to the police station. I brought 2 video clips from other parents, photographs of my injuries, time-stamped notes, and the names of 4 people who had been within about 10 feet when it happened. The officer taking the report asked what I wanted. I had thought about that answer all morning. I'm not asking you to arrest anyone today. I'm not asking for a no-contact order. I only want the incident documented exactly as it happened, on today's date, before anyone has time to tell a different version. He looked at me for about 2 seconds, then began typing. At 4 that afternoon, I sat in Olivia Grant's conference room in Hartford. I placed 4 things on the table in the order I had arranged them the night before. Printouts of every message Ryan had sent from gala night through that morning. The 3-paragraph statement he wanted me to sign. The $24,700 transaction record with screenshots showing the card lock. And a folder of photographs from the Napa album, with 12 representative photos, printed along with their date and time metadata. Olivia reviewed everything for 20 minutes, making notes in pencil. All right, she set down the pencil. Now there are 4 things you must not do, and I need you to promise all 4. She counted on her fingers. 1. Post nothing online. 2. Do not access any school system, email account, or data, even if you have a password, even if someone at the school offers to give it to you. 3. Do not argue with him privately again. All communication goes through text or email, and you respond only to matters involving the children. 4. Do not send anything to the parent association, the press, or anyone other than me or your father. I understand. I'm telling you why, so you can keep the promise on the day you want to break it. She closed her notebook. Right now, you have a clean record. Clean means everything in it was obtained lawfully. If you add one thing obtained improperly, they will not argue about each item. They will talk only about that one item, and the rest disappears. That evening, my father came to my friend's house. We sat at the kitchen table after the children were asleep. He brought a file and placed it in front of me. I talked to Olivia. I'll let the foundation take the lead. You do not have to appear in any document. I'll demand the grant use reports. I'll work with the school board. I'll handle that part. You take care of the children. He said it with entirely good intentions. I knew that. No, Dad. Megan, you can protect the foundation's money. That is your job, and you can do it. But my children and the truth about this are things I have to stand up for myself. You do not have to do everything yourself to prove something. I'm not proving anything. I pulled the file toward me. Listen to me. 6 months ago, you told me I should learn while you were still sitting there to teach me. I signed the papers, put them in a drawer, and told my husband it was just a title that looked nice on paper. My father was silent. I accept. Starting today, I accept the responsibility of successor co-trustee for real, not just on paper. But I accept it through the institution. Every decision involving Westbridge goes through the foundation's and the board's proper process, with Olivia reviewing it legally. I will not decide anything on my own because of my private situation. And you are not to use the foundation to do anything for me personally. He looked at me for a long time. Do you know where this is going? No. But I know that if I let you do it for me, 6 months from now people will say this was about a rich old man defending his daughter. Thursday afternoon, Westbridge emailed all parents and employees. Ryan Brooks and Ashley Reed were placed on paid administrative leave, while the school conducted an internal review. I read the email at 4:20. At 4:27, I opened the parent portal to check Ava's makeup schedule. My account had been disabled. At 3:15 Friday afternoon, I parked in the parent lot at Westbridge Academy, the way I had done roughly 1,000 times. I walked to the side entrance used by parents picking up elementary students and swiped my card. Red light. I swiped again. Red. I wiped the card on my sleeve and tried a 3rd time, and just then the door opened from the inside. A security officer named Ray, the man who called Ethan little buddy every morning, stood in the doorway. Hi, Miss Brooks. He did not look directly at me. I need you to go around to the main entrance. You'll have to wait at reception. Is my card broken, Ray? Please go to reception. I walked around the front courtyard, about 200 yards, under the afternoon sun. The main lobby had a reception desk, a row of chairs, and a glass wall separating it from the corridor leading to the classrooms. From where I stood, I could see the entire hallway. I stood there for 7 minutes. During those 7 minutes, 3 other parents passed the reception desk, 2 had swiped in through the side door and walked straight through. The third was a father I regularly greeted at Ethan's soccer field. He saw me standing there with a security officer 6 feet away, gave me a quick nod, and kept walking. Then an administrator I knew only by sight came out carrying a paper in a plastic sleeve. She handed it to me and did not invite me to sit. It was a campus access restriction notice. 1 page. The reason was stated on the 4th line: disruptive conduct at a school event. Who signed this? The request came from the head of school's office. Did the board of trustees approve it? I'm only delivering the letter, ma'am. I understand. May I have your name and the time you handed this to me? She gave me her name, and I entered it into my phone right in front of her, along with the time. The bell rang at 3:30. Students began pouring into the hallway behind the glass. I saw Ava in the second group, backpack on one shoulder, her ponytail crooked the way it always was. She walked to the side door, the door where we always met, and looked out. No one was there. She stood at that door for about 30 seconds. She looked toward the parking lot, then down at a classmate's phone beside her, then back toward the lot. I saw her switch the backpack to her other shoulder, something she always did when she was starting to worry. I slapped my palm against the glass. Ava turned around. She saw me standing in the main lobby behind the glass wall, with a security officer about 6 feet away, and I saw her face turn red. That was what I had not expected, and it hurt more than the paper in my hand. My daughter was 10 years old. Around her were 30 children from her grade, and her mother was being kept in the front lobby like a stranger. A week earlier, the whole school had seen her father hit her mother. Now her whole grade was seeing that her mother was not allowed into the hallway. She lowered her head and hurried toward the main lobby. I did not make a scene. I thought about it. I could have demanded to see Thomas right then. I could have spoken loudly enough for the whole lobby to hear. I could have asked Ray whether he understood who he was blocking. But my daughter was walking toward me, and 30 children were watching. I went outside, stood on the front steps, and waited for her to come out. "Let's go home, honey." In the car, I called Olivia Grant over Bluetooth, said only 4 sentences, then called Margaret Sloan. Margaret was quiet for a moment after I finished. "Tell me that again. Who issued the restriction?" "The letter says the request came from the head of school's office. The board has not approved any access restriction against any parent. There has been no meeting about it. No vote. Then does he have authority to do it on his own?" "No." Her voice did not get louder, but it changed. "The head of school has authority to handle immediate safety issues, barring a parent from picking up her child on an ongoing basis, based on an incident that happened off campus, where that parent was the victim, is not within that authority. Send me a photo of the letter. If you have the name of the person who delivered it and the time, include those too." I have both. By 7 that evening, the restriction had been rescinded. My card worked again Monday morning. Margaret also did something else whose significance I did not fully understand at the time. She sent written instructions to the school's IT and security departments to preserve all emails, system logs, and internal requests related to disabling my parent account and issuing the access restriction, beginning on the date of the gala. I did not understand the significance until months later, when those emails were read aloud in a conference room. On the drive home, Ava said nothing for the first 10 minutes. Then she asked, still looking out the window, "Why wouldn't Grandpa let you into the school?" I already had 3 answers in my head. 2 of them made her grandfather look terrible, and both were true. "I think he's very scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared that people will think badly of the school. He's worked there for 17 years, honey. To him, that school is almost his whole life. But what he did was wrong." Yes, it was wrong. I turned onto Post Road. Sometimes adults get so afraid of losing their reputation that they protect something wrong, and they tell themselves they are protecting something good. It happens more often than you think. Ava was quiet for a while. "Are you scared?" "Yes. I'm scared all the time." She turned to look at me. I do not think she expected that answer. At 9 that night, an email from the school landed in every parent's inbox. It was 4 paragraphs long and signed by Thomas Brooks, head of school. The incident at the fundraiser was described with exactly 1 phrase: a family conflict unrelated to the school's finances. The number began appearing during the second week. $500,000. That was the amount of the Whitmore Foundation's matching commitment to Westbridge for that academic year. The unreleased portion my father had announced from the stage was being suspended. I do not know who first said the number outside a meeting room, but by midweek it was in every parent group chat at the school. And it always came with one sentence. The school lost $500,000 because of the CFO's wife. Not because of the expenses, not because of the records, because of me. The story had been built very neatly, and I had to admit it was easy to believe. A woman discovers her husband is having an affair. She gets jealous. She has a rich father. She uses him to destroy her husband's career, and the children at the school become collateral damage. One mother wrote in the 5th grade group, "I'm not taking anyone's side, but if it's a private matter, don't drag the whole school into it." That post got 27 likes. Ryan called me Wednesday afternoon. His voice had changed. It was no longer the voice of a man giving orders, and it was not the voice of the man negotiating in the kitchen. It was the voice of someone presenting a carefully considered proposal. "I think we should end this before it does any more damage." "Go ahead." 3 things. You withdraw the police report. Charles restores the funding, and the two of us issue a joint statement. Not the one I gave you before. We rewrite it. You can change whatever you want. And then? Then everything stops. No audit, no board, no lawyers. If you want a divorce, we divorce quietly. I won't fight you on anything. I sat there without speaking. Megan, do you know what it's like in there right now? They've already started planning program cuts. Not my salary, tuition assistance. If that $500,000 doesn't come back, there are children who will have to leave the school in June. Keep going. I just want you to understand that if that happens, it won't happen because of me. It will happen because you chose this path. I hung up after that sentence and sat in my car for about 10 minutes in the parking lot at work. I had heard that same idea 3 times from 3 people over the previous weeks, phrased differently each time. This time, I finally saw its shape. Money had gone to the wrong places for 2 years. I was the one who pointed it out. And they were building a story in which the person who identified the problem became the cause of the problem. It was so neat I almost admired it. If I stayed quiet, no one lost anything. If I spoke, children lost scholarships. In either case, I became the person deciding those children's futures, not the person who had approved the spending. Thursday, Ava came home and did not eat dinner. She went straight to her room. I went up about 20 minutes later and sat on the floor. Did something happen at school? Chloe said the school lost $500,000 because of you. She did not look at me. She said her mom told her. What do you think? Ava turned around, and her face was red. Why can't you just let it go? I did not answer immediately. Dad was wrong. I know Dad was wrong. But now everyone is talking about our family, and Miss Reed is on leave, and Dad is too, and my friend says Dad is going to get arrested. She started speaking faster. And Sophia too. If the money is frozen, does she have to change schools? What if she has to leave because of our family? That was the question that made me sit silent longer than any other question that entire month. I'm going to answer one thing at a time, okay? She nodded. Your dad will not get arrested because I told the truth about that night. What happens to him is decided by other people based on what he did, not by me. But if you didn't say anything, if I didn't say anything, he still would have done it. I just would have hidden it. Ava was quiet. And about loving your dad. You are still allowed to love your dad, Ava. You do not have to choose sides. You can love him and know that he did something wrong at the same time. Both things can exist together, even when it feels awful. What about Sophia? I did not have an answer for that. And I did not lie to her. I don't know yet. I'm trying to make sure no one has to leave the school, but I am not sure I can. And I'm not going to promise you something I'm not sure about. She lay down and turned her face toward the wall. I stayed there another 15 minutes, then went downstairs. And that night, for the first time in weeks, I sat at the kitchen table and genuinely asked myself not to reassure myself whether I was hurting my children more than I was fixing. At 11 that night, I opened my inbox. There was an email from an address I did not recognize, sent at 10:40. The subject line was blank. The body had 3 lines. I used to work for Ashley Reed in development. I know why the records do not match. I'm willing to talk to you. But your attorney has to be there. The last time I spoke up, Westbridge cost me my job. We met Saturday morning in a conference room, rented by the hour on the third floor of an office building in Norwalk. Danielle Kim chose the location. She chose the time too, and she requested a room without glass walls facing the hallway. She was 34, wearing a gray sweater, and she arrived 20 minutes before us. When Olivia and I walked in, Danielle was already sitting with her back to the wall, facing the door. "Before we start," she said as soon as we sat down, "I want to be clear that I do not trust the Whitmore Foundation to protect me. I do not trust the board to protect me either. I tried once already." Olivia nodded. "You have every reason to feel that way. I am counsel for the foundation, not for you. I will tell you what I can do and what I cannot do, and you decide." Danielle watched her for a moment, then opened her purse. She had worked in Westbridge's Development and Donor Relations Department for 3.5 years, the last 2 under Ashley Reed. One of her responsibilities was collecting documentation for donor development travel airfare, hotels, hospitality expenses, and matching those documents to trip reports before the files moved to finance. "After the Napa trip, I received receipts but no report," she said. "I waited 4 days and asked. Miss Reed sent me one, and there was no donor name in it at all. The purpose of the trip was listed as West Coast Relationship Development." "Did you say anything?" Olivia asked. "I said the file would not clear finance. A donor trip has to identify the organization or person who was met. That is standard procedure. I had done it dozens of times. I also refused to certify that the documentation was complete." "What happened next?" 3 days later, she sent another version. This one had the name of a family in Sonoma. Danielle placed both hands on the table. "That name was added 11 days after the trip ended. Did you verify it?" "I called them." She said it very quietly. "I made a normal courtesy call, something like, 'Thank you for taking the time to meet with the school last month.' The woman asked me where the meeting had supposedly taken place. No one in the room spoke for a few seconds. The file was approved anyway," Danielle continued. "Mr. Brooks signed it. I saw his electronic signature on the final approval." She took a thin packet from her purse and placed it in the center of the table, but kept her hand on top of it. "I emailed Mr. Brooks, the head of school. I was very careful. I did not accuse anyone. I only said several travel files were missing documentation and I thought they should be reviewed before the quarter was closed." "Did he answer?" "Yes, 2 days later." She lifted her hand from the packet. 6 words. I pulled the top page toward me. It was a printed email. Sender: Thomas Brooks. Time: 4:47 p.m. The body: exactly as written. With no greeting and no signature. "Deal with it after the gala." I read it 3 times. "After that, everything was handled very professionally," Danielle said. "At my next performance review, my rating was lowered 1 level for lack of proactive team collaboration. I was removed from our 2 largest donor accounts. I was assigned to compile guest lists. No one yelled at me, no one threatened me, they just made my job meaningless for 4 months. Then you left." "I resigned in January. My choice. On paper, no one fired me." She pushed the packet toward Olivia. "That's the email. That is all I'm giving you." I looked at the papers and knew I was at exactly the kind of moment where I could ruin everything. I could ask what else she had kept. I could say a 6-word email was not enough. I could remind her that my husband had slapped me in front of 200 people and my daughter had seen it. I asked something else. "Miss Kim, I only want to ask one thing. While you worked there, were any students' tuition assistance awards reduced or delayed?" Danielle looked up at me. She watched me for a long moment, and I understood she was testing something. "That's what you're asking first?" "Yes. Not how many expenses Mr. Brooks approved? The auditor will find that. I need to know whether any children are already paying the price." Danielle sat still for about 5 seconds. Then she bent down, opened her purse again, and took out a second packet, thicker than the first. "These are 2 versions of the Napa trip report. The first has no donor name, the second does. Both are time-stamped." She put them down. Then she removed 1 more page, a single sheet, and placed it on top. This is something I recorded myself from cases I personally handled before I left. I did not take any school data export. It was a list, originally handwritten, then typed. Student name, grade, and one short note column. Reduced, delayed 3 weeks, delayed 2 cycles, partially withdrawn. I don't know the full circumstances of every family, Danielle said. Some families may have had income changes. Some may have requested adjustments themselves. I'm not drawing conclusions. I only recorded the cases I personally saw in the system this year. I counted 11 lines. I read from top to bottom and stopped at the third line. Sofia Ramirez, grade 5, reduced. Olivia gave me one instruction as soon as Danielle left the conference room. You are not to contact any of the families on this list. I know one of them. I know you do. You still do not contact her. She placed the list in the file folder. If you go knocking on 11 doors, 6 months from now they will say you were organizing parents against the school. This list goes directly to the auditor. So I contacted no one. But I still picked up my children every afternoon, and Elena Ramirez still stood in the same waiting area with me because Sophia and Ava were dismissed at the same time. Over the next few days, I learned 3 things she volunteered herself. Not because I asked. She had picked up 2 additional night shifts a week at the hospital. She mentioned it while complaining about sleep. Sophia had not signed up for the Boston field trip in May. Elena said her daughter claimed she did not like museums, and she laughed, and I laughed too, and we both knew the trip cost $85. And one afternoon, she asked me very quickly, in a lower voice than usual, whether transferring schools in the middle of the year affected a student's records. I told her I would find out. That night, Ava told me something else while brushing her teeth. Sophia isn't going to Chloe's birthday party, Mom. Why not? She says she's busy. But I know it's because she'd have to buy a present. Ava rinsed her mouth. Everyone spends like $30 on Chloe's birthday gifts. I stood in the bathroom doorway with a towel in my hand. In my mind, I saw the giant screen in the Harborview ballroom and Sofia Ramirez's face, hair pulled high, standing in front of a science project board with the donation appeal running underneath. They had used her picture to ask for money on the same night I sat beside her mother and heard that her aid had just been cut. I did not go looking for the other 9 families. I kept my promise to Olivia. But 2 more cases came to me on their own, the way things do in a small community. At Ethan's soccer practice, one mother said her child had to leave the swim team because extracurricular fees were no longer being subsidized that year. She was talking to someone else, and I happened to be standing nearby. And in the 3rd grade group chat, someone asked whether anyone knew the procedure for requesting records for a mid-year school transfer. 3 cases from a list of 11 lines. On Sunday, Ava sat doing homework at the kitchen table and asked me without looking up, "Did Dad take Sophia's money, Mom?" I set my mug down. "I don't know for sure yet. That's the truth, honey, I don't know. Someone is reviewing the books, and they are not finished. But you think he did. I think there is enough reason to investigate. That is different from knowing for sure, and I will not tell you I know something when I don't." Ava put down her pencil. She was quiet for about half a minute, and when she spoke again, her voice did not sound the way it had 3 weeks earlier. "I don't want Sophia to have to change schools because of my dad." That was the first time in this entire story that my daughter was not talking about her own fear. 3 days later, Margaret Sloan called an emergency board meeting. The board voted to hire an independent audit firm to review all school spending from the previous 2 years. They selected Maya Chen, a forensic accountant specializing in nonprofit organizations, whose firm was based in New Haven. She had never worked for the Whitmore Foundation. She had never heard of Westbridge Academy before the first call. That was a condition I proposed to my father and Margaret, and they both agreed. I met Maya only once during that period, to turn over documents. We sat in the conference room at Olivia's office with Olivia present, and everything I handed over was recorded on a chain of custody memorandum signed by all 3 of us. I gave her the gala estimate that had been mistakenly sent to the parent group, the screenshot of the state business registration lookup, the 2 versions of the Napa report and Danielle's 6-word email, and the 11-line list Danielle had created from cases she had personally handled. That list was only a lead. Maya would independently compare every case against school records. Maya reviewed each item, asked me where it came from, and recorded the source in the handoff memorandum. For the estimate, she asked the name of the group chat, how many people were in it, and who had sent the file by mistake. For the photo album, she asked whose name the iPad was under and who had configured the syncing. Then I asked her one question. Do you need me involved in anything else? No. And I recommend that you not be. She placed the documents in her case. You're an accountant. You are going to want to sit down and read the general ledger with me, and I understand that feeling. But if you touch their books even once, my report loses value. The other side will not have to argue a single number, they will only have to say the CFO's wife was in the room. I did not touch a single page. For the next 11 days, I went to work, drove the children to and from school, cooked dinner at my friend's house, and knew nothing. They were the longest 11 days of the entire story. In my profession, when I hand a file to someone else for review, I can still open it and check progress. This time, I had nothing to open. I had only mornings, afternoons, and Ethan's math homework. At 7 in the evening on the 11th day, Maya called. Miss Brooks, I just finished reviewing the travel expenses. Yes. Napa was not one bad invoice. It was the beginning of a pattern that goes back nearly 2 years. Maya Chen presented her preliminary report on a Tuesday morning in the conference room at Olivia Grant's law firm. There were 7 people in the room. Margaret Sloan and 2 Westbridge board members. My father, Olivia, Maya, and me. Thomas was not there. Ryan was not there. That was the board's decision, not mine. And Margaret explained it in 2 sentences. Both men were within the scope of the review. Maya did not use slides. She placed 4 binders on the table, each with a different colored cover, and spoke for almost an hour in the tone of someone reading test results. I divided the findings into 4 categories. I will give you the number at the end, not at the beginning, because when people hear the number first, they stop listening. Category 1. AR Events and Strategy LLC had been formed in Connecticut 1 year and 7 months earlier. Registration records and banking documents confirmed that Ashley Reed was the sole owner. During that period, Westbridge Academy paid the company $91,300 across 14 invoices for VIP guest coordination, donor relations, consulting, and event experience design. All 3 services are listed in the job description. Miss Reed was already being paid a salary to perform, Maya said. The school paid twice for the same work, and the second payment went to a company owned by the employee herself. I sat at the end of the table and heard again what she had said to me in the Harborview ballroom. Ryan needs someone who understands the donor world, not a wife who's used to checking invoices at a dental office. It turned out I had read the invoices correctly. Category 2. 2 business trips were recorded as donor meetings, but no donor meeting could be confirmed, Napa and Miami. For both trips, the initial report did not identify the organization or individual supposedly met. Names were added to later versions after the trips had ended 11 days later for Napa and 14 days later for Miami. She turned a page. I contacted both parties named in those reports. Neither confirmed that a meeting took place. Miami. I had not known there was a Miami trip. I sat there trying to remember where he had told me he was going that month, and I could not. I only remembered that there had been a week when Ethan had an ear infection and I took 2 days off to stay home with him. Category 3. Several personal expenses could not be substantiated as business-related. Room upgrades, high-priced dinners for 2, and a purchase at a jewelry store in Napa. Maya did not say anything more about that last item. She read the amount and moved to the next page. I looked down at the table. I had seen that bracelet 3 times. On the iPad screen close to 1 in the morning, on Ashley Reed's wrist in the fundraiser ballroom, and in a photograph of an open blue velvet box. Now it had a line in a school's general ledger. Category 4. The approval chain, Maya said. This is the most important category for accountability. The larger expenses all carried the CFO's electronic approval. Not 1, not 2. Over 2 years, Ryan Brooks's signature appeared on every invoice above the approval threshold for lower-level staff. One more detail. She placed a printout on the table that I had seen before. On February 17th, an employee in development sent a written warning to the head of school about travel files that lacked supporting documentation. Before that, the head of school had also received a separate warning about expense records that needed review. Neither warning was forwarded to the board. I checked the minutes of all 4 board meetings that followed. Margaret Sloane sat straighter in her chair. She did not say anything. She only wrote, "The total amount requiring review is $247,860. No one in the room said anything for about 5 seconds. Then Maya did what I had heard her promise from the beginning, and she did it without hesitation. I need to be clear about what this number means and what it does not mean. She raised 4 fingers. This does not mean $247,000 was stolen. Some of it is simply unsupported, possibly legitimate, but no one retained the receipt. Some of it presents a clear conflict of interest, but was still approved through the school's internal process. Some of it, in my opinion, should be repaid, and there is a portion I recommend be referred to the appropriate authorities for review." "Are you concluding that anyone acted intentionally?" one board member asked. "No, the word intentional does not appear anywhere in my report." Maya closed the binder. "I document where the money went, who approved it, and whether it matched the stated purpose. The rest is for you, council, or a court." I sat quietly through the final part of the meeting. I had prepared myself to feel relieved. For weeks, I had imagined the moment when someone would hold up the documents and say I had been right. What I felt sitting in that conference room was not relief. I had thought I was dealing with an affair accompanied by a few bad invoices. Instead, I was sitting in front of 2 years, 2 trips, 14 invoices, a company owned by my husband's mistress, and a written warning my father-in-law had read and then set aside. The man whose signature appeared on those pages was the same man who had slept 3 nights in a plastic chair beside my hospital bed when Ava was born early. My father spoke as people began gathering their papers. "Margaret, I'm going to be direct. The foundation will terminate all funding to Westbridge. Not suspend it, terminate it. We do not put money into an organization that operates this way." Several people nodded. I pulled Danielle's list from my file and placed it on the table facing my father. 11 lines. Sofia Ramirez was the 3rd. "No, Dad." He looked at me. "We are not making children pay for this again." My father and I argued about that for 4 days. He was not wrong. That was the hardest part. His argument was strong. An organization that had allowed 2 years of spending like this to pass did not deserve more of anyone else's money, and if the foundation continued funding it, the foundation itself shared responsibility. I did not argue with that part. I only told him we were talking about 2 different things. "You can refuse to give $1 more to the current leadership." I agree. But those 11 kids did not sign a single invoice. Then what do you plan to do? Send money to that school and trust it to get to the right place? No, I plan not to send it to the school. It took me 3 days working with Olivia and Margaret to build the mechanism, and there was nothing complicated about it. The foundation established a separate guarantee, completely independent of the $500,000 matching commitment. It could be used only for the tuition assistance and activity fees of the 11 students on the list, in exactly the amounts each student had lost or had delayed. The money did not pass through the school's general budget. It was paid directly into each student's tuition account, using a schedule independently reconciled by a third party, and no member of the current leadership had authority to approve or redirect it. The arrangement lasted only until the board completed its decisions. It was not a new commitment. It was a splint. Olivia reviewed the foundation charter and confirmed the mechanism was lawful. Margaret Sloane brought it to the board, and it was approved in a 20-minute meeting. I told no one except the people who had to know. I did not post in any parent group. I did not tell Elena Ramirez, even though I stood beside her at school pickup 3 times that week and wanted to tell her every time. Olivia explained why, and she was right. If I became the person delivering the news, then the money would turn into a personal favor from me, and 11 families would owe me a debt they had never asked for. The school sent a letter to each family on Friday. That Friday afternoon at pickup, Elena walked over to me and stood quietly for about 5 seconds before speaking. "I got a letter from the school this morning. They restored Sophia's aid, the activity fees too. That's wonderful. I called 3 times before this, and every time they said they were still reviewing it. She smiled, and her eyes turned red. She can go to Boston now. I said I was happy for both of them. That was all I said. That evening, Ava ran into the kitchen before even taking off her backpack. "Mom, Sophia doesn't have to change schools," she texted me this afternoon. She stood there, and I could see her trying to decide what to do next. Then she hugged me. It was the first hug my daughter had initiated since gala night. I had counted every day without allowing myself to admit I was counting. I did not tell her that I had anything to do with it. She still did not know, and I thought that was better. My father asked me about it on Sunday, when he came to see the children. We stood on my friend's back porch watching Ethan kick a soccer ball against the fence. "There's still something I don't understand, Megan. That school just let your husband slap you in front of 200 people. Your father-in-law blocked you at the door from picking up your daughter. And then, you spent 3 straight days figuring out how to pump money into them." I did not pump money into them. I did not give them $1. Look at the structure, they cannot even touch it. You know what I mean? I do. I watched Ethan miss a kick and fall onto the grass. But think about it. If I let those 11 children lose their places, then 10 years from now, Ryan will still tell my kids their mother destroyed a school, and he will have evidence. Is that why? No. I was quiet for a while. That's the easiest reason to say out loud. The real reason is simpler. Those kids did nothing wrong. My father said nothing more. On Monday, Margaret Sloan called me. She said the board would hold a formal meeting on the audit findings and the future of the leadership in 3 weeks. The Whitmore Foundation will be invited to send a representative to speak about its funding position. She paused. "Miss Brooks, I want that person to be you." I asked why not my father. "Because I just watched you do something I rarely see after 20 years in this chair. You had every reason to shut off the money and let them collapse. You did not." I accepted. That meant that, from that day forward, my role as successor co-trustee would no longer be sitting in a drawer. On Wednesday, Westbridge received formal written notice from the foundation. The guarantee for the 11 students had been established, while the $500,000 matching commitment remained withheld until the board completed its leadership decisions. Ryan called me at 5 that afternoon. For the first time in weeks, he was not calling to give orders. We met at Olivia Grant's office Friday morning. Olivia sat beside me. Ryan's attorney sat beside him. That was a condition I had set, and he accepted it without argument, something he would not have done a few weeks earlier. Ryan had lost weight. He wore a sweater instead of a dress shirt, and when he began speaking, his voice sounded like the one I had heard in our kitchen 13 years earlier, when we were still living in a rented apartment on Elm Street. "I want to say a few things first, not as excuses." Olivia nodded for him to continue. Ashley had taken advantage of him. She was the one who proposed everything. She was the one who submitted the invoices, and he trusted her because she reported directly to him. He signed because he trusted his employee. It was a management failure, not an intentional act. I sign around 400 documents a year, Megan. You know that. You do the same thing at your job. That was true. I did. And I knew one thing he was hoping I would forget. Approval thresholds exist precisely because no one gives 400 documents the same level of attention. Anything above the threshold is supposed to be read by the person signing it. That is the entire reason the threshold exists. I said nothing. I let him continue. As for the slap, he said he had thought about it every day. He said it did not represent who he was, that in 12 years he had never done that before and would never do it again. I noticed that in that entire paragraph, he did not mention Ava once. Then he made his offer. He would voluntarily resign, quietly, for personal reasons. Ashley would repay a portion of the expenses. I would withdraw the police report. My father would restore the matching commitment. "And I want us to try again," he said. "For the kids. Not right now. But don't close that door." I let him finish. Then I asked one question. "If I had not opened the iPad that night, would you have ended things with Ashley?" Ryan looked down at the table. "That's over." That is not an answer. Megan, I can't answer a hypothetical. You can, you just don't want to. His attorney put a hand on the table as if to say something, then stopped. Fine. Another question. I opened my file and took out the list. 11 students. Their aid was reduced or delayed this year. I know 3 of them by sight. Did you know about this? Ryan glanced at the page. Those were budget decisions. Allocations change every year. You're connecting 2 unrelated things. $91,300 went into Ashley Reed's company. That same year, a 5th grader's activity fees were cut, and her mother had to pick up 2 extra night shifts a week. Budgets do not work that way. I've done this work for 13 years, Ryan. Budgets work exactly that way. He was silent for about 3 seconds, and I watched the moment he decided the softer approach had failed. He sat straighter. All right. Then let's talk practically. If you do not withdraw this, I will ask for equal custody. 50-50. Alternating weeks. Ask for it. And I will make it clear to the court that you used your father's financial power to interfere with an educational institution, that you pushed a school into crisis, and that your own daughter was ostracized by classmates because of her mother's actions. He looked at me. If Ava grows up carrying that, you'll know whose fault it was. Olivia spoke for the first time in the entire meeting. Mr. Brooks, I strongly advise you to stop that line right there. The meeting ended at 11. Ryan stood first, picked up his coat and turned back at the door. You do not have the right to decide my future. You're right. I remained seated. Your signatures will do that. At 4 that afternoon, my phone buzzed. Ashley Reed. The message was longer than I expected. She wrote that Ryan was putting all the blame on her, that his lawyer had contacted her and suggested she accept responsibility for most of the expenses, that the company had been his idea, not hers, and that for 11 months he had told her he would file for divorce as soon as the $500,000 matching grant was released. The last line, "Do you believe me?" I read it 3 times. I could have replied. I could have said I understood, that she had been used too, that both of us had been lied to by the same man. She had stood in the Harborview ballroom with her hand on my husband's arm and told me that a wife who knew her place would not ruin her husband's most important night. She had worn that bracelet to the fundraiser. She knew where those 14 invoices went because she wrote them. I promised her nothing. I did not answer a single word. I took screenshots of the entire message and sent them to Olivia Grant and Maya Chen with exactly 1 line. Received at 4:07 p.m. I have not responded and will not respond. The special meeting took place at 9 Thursday morning in the boardroom on the 2nd floor of Westbridge Academy's administration building. It was a room with a long wooden table, 16 chairs, and a wall lined with portraits of past heads of school. I had been in that room exactly once, 6 years earlier, at a back-to-school reception, and that time I stood in the corner holding a glass of orange juice. I arrived 20 minutes early and sat in the waiting room outside with Olivia. I wore a charcoal suit, no jewelry except my watch, and I brought exactly 2 things, a notebook and a pen. Through the crack in the door, I watched people enter one by one. Margaret Sloan sat at the head of the table. 5 board members with no involvement in the matter sat along both sides. Maya Chen sat near the far end with 3 boxes of documents at her feet. Ryan entered at 8. 50 inches, a dark navy suit, his hair freshly cut. He sat in the middle of the left side. Ashley Reed came in 4 minutes later and sat 3 chairs away from him. She did not look at him. He did not look at her. In the 4 minutes they sat in the same room before the meeting began, they did not exchange a word. Thomas Brooks came in last, walked to Margaret and shook her hand, then sat in the first chair on the right. 1 chair remained empty, opposite Margaret at the other end of the table. On the table in front of that chair was a folded cardstock nameplate, and from where I sat I could not read what it said. At 8:55, Thomas turned to Margaret and asked a question loudly enough for the room to hear. "Mr. Whitmore isn't here yet?" "The Whitmore Foundation has confirmed its representative," Margaret said. At exactly 9, Olivia and I walked in. I heard Ryan's chair shift against the floor. I walked the length of the table to the opposite end and sat in the empty chair. The nameplate in front of me had 2 lines. Megan Brooks, Whitmore Education Foundation. Thomas stood. "Chair Sloan, I must object. This is a meeting about the school's financial matters. The person who just sat down is a parent in the middle of a family dispute with two people present in this room. Her presence is entirely inappropriate. Margaret did not look up from her documents. Please sit down, Mr. Brooks. I will make the introduction, and then you may place your objection on the record if you wish. She waited until he sat. Miss Megan Brooks is attending today's meeting in her capacity as successor co-trustee of the Whitmore Education Foundation. That role was established in the Foundation's governing documents in October of last year, and this board received formal confirmation and a copy of the governing instrument last week. Miss Brooks is authorized to speak regarding the Foundation's funding position and to vote on any new disbursement by the Foundation to Westbridge Academy. I did not look at Ryan while she spoke. I looked down at my notebook and wrote the page heading. Board Meeting 9. But I heard him. I heard the short inhale, and I heard his pen hit the wooden table. 12 years, 6 months of that role sitting on paper in a drawer, 3 weeks of being called a jealous wife using her father for revenge. I had imagined that moment many times, and in every version in my head, I turned to look at him. I did not turn. Margaret invited me to make an opening statement. Thank you, Chair Sloan. I put down my pen. I want to make 3 things clear before Miss Chen presents. The room went silent. First, this meeting does not exist to judge a marriage. What happened between Mr. Brooks and me is being handled elsewhere by people with authority to handle it. I will not bring it into this room, and I ask that no one else do so either. I looked once down the length of the table. Second, I do not have authority to decide who works at Westbridge. The Foundation does not own this school. The Foundation does not have a seat in school administration. The only thing the Foundation decides is whether it continues putting money here, and under what conditions. All personnel decisions belong to the board. Third, I opened my notebook. I came here with 3 questions. Who submitted the records? Who approved them? And who received warnings and failed to bring them to the board? I suggest we go through the documents one section at a time and let the answers sit where the evidence puts them. Maya Chen began presenting at 9:11. She followed the same order she had used in Olivia's office, but more slowly this time, and now she projected each supporting document onto the screen. Ownership of AR Events and Strategy. Business registration records, banking records, 14 invoices. Ashley Reed sat very straight through that section. She objected to nothing. 2 business trips. 2 Napa reports side by side on the screen, the earlier version and the later version, each with a timestamp in the lower corner. Then the same for Miami. When Maya said she had contacted both parties named in the reports and neither confirmed a meeting, I saw Ashley look toward Ryan for the first time that morning. He did not look back. When Maya reached the approval chain, Ryan spoke. Chair Sloan, may I? He opened his briefcase. I respect Miss Chen's work, but I think there is a fundamental issue here that we are overlooking. Go ahead. He turned toward me and spoke in his most courteous voice. The finances of a private school are not the same as the finances of a network of dental practices. We have restricted funds, unrestricted funds, transfers between categories, and a fundraising cycle that can be very easy to misunderstand if someone has never operated within it. I do not question Miss Brooks's good faith. I only worry that she is reading a system she does not know. 3 weeks earlier, that sentence would have made me feel the need to prove something. Mr. Brooks may be right, I said. I have never managed the budget of a private school. Ryan leaned back slightly. So, I suggest we do not debate which of us understands the system better. We should just read the documents. I turned to Maya. Miss Chen, please continue. We were at the approval thresholds. Maya continued. She spent 18 minutes on that section. The school's approval thresholds, the list of items above those thresholds, the electronic signature on each one, and the accompanying emails requesting expedited payment. When she finished, the room was silent for about 5 seconds. Then Maya bent down, lifted 3 binders from the box at her feet, and placed them on the table. She pushed the first toward Ashley Reed, the second toward Ryan. Then she stood, walked 3 steps down the table, and placed the final binder in front of the man sitting in the first chair on the right. The cover carried one name, Thomas Brooks. Ashley Reed spoke first, though no one had asked her to. The company is mine. She looked directly at Margaret as she said it. I formed it. I own it outright. I am not disputing a single line in Miss Chen's records. A board member asked why she had formed a company to do the exact work she was already being paid a salary to perform. Because Mr. Brooks told me to. Ryan gave a short, disbelieving laugh through his nose. He said the school's procurement process was too slow. Ashley continued evenly. He said if I set up an outside entity, event-related work could go through the vendor process and we would not have to wait 3 weeks for internal approval. His exact word was streamline. I can identify the email. Miss Reed is describing a conversation that never occurred, Ryan said. You also told me you would divorce after the $500,000 matching grant was released. Did that conversation occur? Margaret tapped the table twice. Miss Reed, this board is not reviewing personal relationships. Keep your presentation within the financial scope. Ashley sat back. Ryan continued immediately. Chair Sloan, I think everyone in this room is watching something fairly obvious. Miss Reed is under scrutiny and is trying to take other people down with her. This is the reaction of a disgruntled employee, and I regret having to say that about someone I once trusted. He opened the binder in front of him and turned a few pages. As for me, Miss Reed prepared these files. She submitted them, and I approved them through standard process. I sign roughly 400 documents a year. If a file appears complete on its face when it is submitted, it gets approved. That is how organizations function. Maya Chen waited until he finished. May I respond to that, Chair Sloan? Margaret nodded. The school has 3 approval levels. Maya advanced to the next slide. Level 1. Under $2,000, department head approval. Level 2. From $2,000 to $10,000, CFO approval based on the submitted file. Level 3. Above $10,000, Westbridge's own internal policy requires the CFO to review original supporting documentation and affirm that review. She advanced again. Over 2 years, there were 11 Level 3 transactions connected to the matters we are discussing. All 11 have the box marked confirming review of original supporting documentation. All 11 bear Mr. Brooks's electronic signature. No one said anything. One more detail. Maya advanced the slide. For 6 of those 11 transactions, emails from Mr. Brooks's account directed accounting to process same-day payment before the complete supporting file had been submitted. I have the send time for each email. I looked at Ryan for about 3 seconds. This was the man who had sat at my kitchen table and told me every expense had been approved. He had been right. That was exactly the problem. Then it was Thomas's turn. He did not open the binder in front of him. He spoke without looking at it. Chair Sloan, I have served this school for 17 years. What we are looking at are process and documentation failures. They are serious, and I do not minimize them, but they are fixable. We review the policies, strengthen controls, recover what needs to be recovered, and move forward. I was not made aware of the details of these transactions at the time they occurred. Did you receive any warnings, Mr. Brooks? Margaret asked. No formal warning was ever brought to my office. Maya put a document on the projector. It was an email dated February 17th, sent from Danielle Kim's account to Thomas Brooks's account. 4 careful paragraphs accusing no one, stating that several travel files lacked documentation and recommending review before the quarter was closed. Then Maya displayed the next page. The reply. Same email thread. 4:47 p.m., 2 days later. 6 words. Deal with it after the gala. Thomas looked at the screen. I do not remember that email. It is in your sent folder, sir, Maya said. The school preserved the data at the board's direction. Margaret turned to another binder in front of her. There is one additional matter for the record. On the 23rd, a campus access restriction was issued against a parent for disruptive conduct at a school event. The board did not approve that restriction. There was no meeting about it. System logs show that the request to disable the parent account was sent from the head of school's office at 4:26 p.m., 6 minutes after the administrative leave notice was distributed. She placed her hand on the file. That parent was the person who raised the financial concern at the event. The board had instructed leadership to remain neutral from the night of the gala forward. Thomas did not answer. In Ryan's binder, the board also had the messages he sent after the gala, including the ones where he used the children's tuition benefit and Ava's and Ethan's place at Westbridge to pressure me into staying silent. I spoke only once during the entire confrontation section. I did not come here to call anyone a criminal. I do not have that authority, and Miss Chen has been clear that her report reaches no conclusion about anyone's motive. I looked at the three people seated along the table. I have only 3 questions. Who submitted the records? Who approved them? And who received warnings and failed to bring them to the board? I closed my notebook. All 3 answers are already on this table, and I did not write any of them. The board went into executive session at 11:40. We went out to the waiting area. Ryan stood alone at the window at the end of the hallway. Ashley sat in the row of chairs, speaking very quietly on the phone. Thomas walked out to the parking lot and did not return for 40 minutes. The result was announced at 12:25. The board terminated Ryan Brooks's employment for breach of financial management duties and for retaliation against a parent after the board had directed leadership to remain neutral. The board terminated Ashley Reed's employment for an undisclosed conflict of interest and for submitting false travel reports. Thomas Brooks was placed on immediate leave and would step down as head of school once the governance review was complete. All records showing potential violations were referred to the appropriate authorities for review. Margaret read that sentence exactly from the minutes and added that the board was making no conclusion about the outcome of that process. Then she turned to me. I read the foundation's position from the document Olivia had prepared, without adding a single word. The Whitmore Foundation would not release the matching funds under the current management structure. The foundation was prepared to restore funding in stages when 4 conditions were met: independent leadership, protected tuition assistance through a segregated mechanism, repayment of improperly used funds, and implementation and verification of a new control system. The guarantee for the 11 students would remain in place regardless of any of those conditions. The meeting ended at 12:40. People stood, gathered papers, and pushed back chairs. Someone opened a window. Ryan stood at his place with one hand on the back of his chair and looked at me across the length of the wooden table. "You really destroyed our family over one mistake?" Ryan waited for me in the second-floor hallway near the top of the stairs. Olivia stood about 12 feet away, not looking directly at us, but not going anywhere either. At the far end of the hall, a security officer stood beside the elevator doors. No one had arranged it. They were simply there, and Ryan and I both knew they were there. "Give me 5 minutes. I stopped about 2 steps away from him. He spoke very quickly, like someone reading a list he had reorganized many times over the previous 40 minutes. I could call my father? That afternoon. One call from Charles Whitmore to Margaret Sloan would be enough for the board to reconsider. They had not signed anything yet. Everything could still be reversed. I could withdraw the police report. It had not gone anywhere yet. No one had been charged. We did not have to divorce. He would go to therapy, as many sessions as I wanted. He would do anything I asked. And Ashley is over. I will never see her again, I swear. "Do you have anything to say about Ava?" He paused. "I did all of this for the kids. Do you think I want my children growing up in a broken family?" I asked something else. "If I had not opened the iPad that night, would you have stopped?" Ryan looked at me. He did not answer. He had had 4 weeks to prepare an answer to that question, and he still did not have one. "Megan, the slap was a mistake. One time, after 12 years, the slap did not start this. It was only the first time anyone else saw it." My voice sounded completely ordinary, and that surprised me. "You told me not to draw attention at my own child's fundraiser. You let people push me out of a photograph and stood there silent. You called me insecure every time I asked a question that had a basis. You used your children's tuition as leverage. You moved $24,700 and called it protecting family assets." He opened his mouth. "The slap was not some isolated event outside those 12 years, Ryan. It was just the one part that 200 people could see with their own eyes." The hallway was quiet. Somewhere downstairs, a bell rang to end a class period. Then his tone changed. "Now you have power. You sit in that chair, you vote, you decide where the money goes. If you want to erase me from this field, you can. Go ahead." "No. Don't pretend, Megan. I am not deciding anything about you, and I need you to understand this correctly. I raised one hand and counted. The board just decided your employment. The auditor determined where the money went. The police and criminal court handle the fact that you hit me. Family court handles the divorce and custody. I lowered my hand. 4 places. None of them is me. The only thing I did was stop hiding it. Ryan looked down at the floor. And there, in that hallway that smelled of floor wax, I told him something I had not told anyone, not even my father. There were 3 nights when I thought about slapping you back. He looked up. Not as a passing thought. I pictured it. I thought about where it would happen, who would see it, and what you would say afterward. I looked directly at him. I want you to know I thought about it. Then why didn't you? Because Ava already saw her father hit her mother. She is not going to see her mother become like her father too. I opened my purse and took out a business card. This is my divorce attorney. From today forward, anything involving division of property and custody goes through our lawyers. He took the card but did not look at it. There are 3 more things about the children, and I'm saying them here so no one can later claim they were never told. First, all communication about the children's schedule goes through the co-parenting app. No private texts, no late-night calls, unless one of the children needs emergency care. Second, you will not use Ava and Ethan's school or tuition in any communication with me again. Not once. Third, if you want to see the children, you see them on the schedule, and you can see them as much as that schedule allows. I will not interfere, and I will not speak badly about you to them. I also will not lie for you. Ryan stood there with the business card in his hand. For 12 years, every time we ended an argument, he was always the one who decided what that argument meant. He retold the story. I accepted his version, and 3 days later I made breakfast. This time, there was nothing for him to rewrite. The record had already been made downstairs by people who were neither him nor me. I walked down the stairs with Olivia and reached the parking lot close to 1 in the afternoon. It was still cold in Connecticut that month, and my car smelled like Ethan's cookie crumbs. I left Westbridge that day without knowing how long the divorce would take, how the court would divide time with the children, or what the next 10 months would look like. But for the first time in years, I knew one thing for certain. My children would not grow up learning that silence was the price they had to pay to make a family look intact. 6 months later, Westbridge Academy had an independent interim head of school and a new chief financial officer hired from outside. The board also adopted a new set of internal controls. I read them. My profession made it impossible not to. They were good. I will not go into the details here, because no one needs to hear an accountant talk about approval thresholds twice in the same story. The more important part was elsewhere. All 11 students on the list had their aid restored. Not through the foundation's temporary guarantee anymore, but through the school's own budget after that budget was restructured. Sofia Ramirez was still in Ava's class. The 2 girls went on the Boston field trip in May, and Ava came home with a whale-shaped keychain she bought for Ethan. Some of the improperly used funds were recovered. The rest was handled through liability insurance, the school's reserve fund, and legal processes I did not participate in and did not follow step by step. Ryan no longer worked at Westbridge. The assault matter and his financial responsibility were handled in 2 different places by people with the authority to handle them. Our divorce was in its final stage. Ashley Reed lost her position. Her company faced demands to repay invalid expenses. I did not know what she was doing then, and I did not look. Thomas Brooks left the head of school position after 17 years, not because he had signed an invoice, but because he received written warnings, set them aside, and then retaliated against the woman who raised the issue. He was still the children's grandfather, and I did not interfere with that relationship. Danielle Kim received a formal apology letter from the board stating that she had acted appropriately and had been treated improperly. Whether she returned to education was her decision. She had not decided, and I thought she had the right never to decide. I stayed with the dental practice group for the first 4 months. After that, I accepted a part-time role at the foundation, a real one, with a job description, working hours, and a reporting line. My father offered me full-time. I said not yet. I still liked the career I had earned for myself. In the 6th month, the Whitmore Foundation announced a new program. Safe Start Scholarship Initiative. It provided tuition support for children of women leaving abusive relationships or leaving families where money was used as a tool of control. The money went directly into the child's tuition account. It did not pass through the abuser's hands. And it did not require the mother to prove that she had done everything right before that point. I wrote that final condition into the program language, and I kept it through 3 rounds of review. The announcement took place in a small auditorium in Greenwich on a Saturday afternoon. There were no banquet tables, no auction, no screen looping pictures of children to solicit donations. I had put that request in writing too. There were about 60 chairs, and nearly all of them were occupied. Ava sat in the front row. She was almost a handspan taller, and she wore a dress she had chosen herself. Ethan sat beside my father in the second seat, swinging his legs and eating both his own cookies and his grandfather's. Before I went to the podium, Ava tugged my sleeve. "Are you scared, Mom?" It was the same question she had asked me in the car on Post Road the day I was blocked in the school lobby and could not pick her up. "Yes. But you're still going up there?" "Yes." I crouched so we were eye to eye. "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared, honey. It means you don't let fear decide for you what is right." Ava nodded and sat back down. I went to the podium and spoke for about 7 minutes. I did not tell my story. I talked about the program, how it worked, where the money would go, and who controlled it. Some people in the room knew why the program existed, some did not. Both were fine. 6 months earlier, I had sat at table 14 in a ballroom near the hallway door, with a name card that read, Times Mrs. Ryan Brooks, and I believed that was my place. I had believed it for 12 years, and I had taught myself to believe it. Now I was not trying to win a better seat in any room. I was doing one thing, making sure no child had to lose their seat because some adult had taken away what belonged to them. I hope my story helps you understand that protecting a family does not always mean keeping it intact at any cost. You can love someone, have children with them, and build a life with them for many years, but that does not give them the right to hit you, use money or children to frighten you, and then demand your silence to protect their reputation. I used to think telling the truth would be what destroyed my family. In the end, I understood that the truth did not create those consequences. The choices that led to them did. And if you were in my position, what would you do? Would you stay quiet first to protect your children's school placement and stable life, or would you still let the investigation go all the way? Leave your choice in the comments. I genuinely want to know how you would handle that situation.